Dice Daddy.
Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Dice Daddy. Today, we're actually going to be starting a new series called Dungeon Exploration. And this series is all going to be about exploring other tabletop games that are out there. And I have to say, I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite tabletop RPGs, D&D excluded, of course, called The World of Darkness. Now, for some of you that have heard of World of Darkness, maybe you've heard of Chronicle of Darkness, maybe you've heard of Vampire the Masquerade. This was a game originally released by White Wolf Publishing back in 1991. Not as early as D&D, but still pretty early. Now, this whole game is a almost gothic misinterpretation of a world gone wrong, inside of where humanity is living alongside of vampires, werewolves, ghouls, ghosts, everything you could possibly imagine, every story that you've heard as a child in the bed, it exists in this world. But humans don't know, and they're kept in the dark about it. That being said, this is an incredible system, and it was an incredible journey for me. This was one of the first systems I ever played on a continual basis, maybe aside from Naruto D20, which that's a whole different video. But we want to talk today about some of the ideas behind World of Darkness, but we also want to go into what it's like to play and create a character inside of World of Darkness. So as I kind of mentioned before, World of Darkness is a modern day setting where you have a number of these supernatural forces at work behind the scenes. Nobody really knows that they're there except for the people involved in what's happening. Most characters start in the game as human. They usually don't end that way, but they usually start that way, and they usually get there before the time's done. That being said, one of the key defining dynamics of World of Darkness that I kind of take away from D&D is that there is no really class or levels or any sort of feats or uh, any sort of dice rolling to even roll up your stats. And that doesn't mean that there's not options for it. That just means that in the core book, it just doesn't exist. And a big part of the reason for that is that the overarching idea with World of Darkness was that it was a more of a narrative, overarching sort of narrative than an actual mechanical system. Now, it was updated, it was refreshed to kind of enhance the mechanical aspects of it. But for the purposes of today, we're talking about the OG World of Darkness. Now, World of Darkness is a D10 system. This means that you only need D10. Now, I don't mean you need just one, like you need a lot of D10s. You are going to be rolling piles of D10s. I think at the most I've rolled like 12 at one time when I was playing, but that was a pretty high character at that time. But usually it's not uncommon to roll anywhere between 3 to 7 D10s for any action that you're trying to take in the game. Now, everything, just like D&D, is determined by two things: your attributes and your skills, to see how successfully you're going to do something in this world. In this world where a human has maybe between 3 to 7 hit points, and most supernatural creatures can regenerate their own flesh, dodge bullets, it becomes a very scary setting. And that's kind of the idea around this. You are walking through the world and you are finally discovering or realizing that you are not alone. And I don't mean aliens. I mean that there are bloodsuckers next door, that there's zombies in the back. This whole idea is based around the idea of a narrative that you yourselves are being exposed to the supernatural aspects right off the bat. Now, that's really what you're playing. You're playing with a D10 system, modern day, modern weapons, modern devices like cell phones even exist at this point. But the idea is that you can take this overarching idea, and you can apply that to any really, you can apply it to the 18th century, you can apply it to the 15th century, you can apply it to the future if you really wanted to go to the work of doing that. But the idea is that the evil creatures in the world are there, you're there, and you're discovering what it is about it and possibly mixing yourself into it. So a D10 system is all you're going to need. So for those people that don't have a lot of dice, this is really simplistic. But how easy is it to build a character in this system? Now, the book breaks it down to exactly 7 steps. Now, the first step is probably one of the hardest steps and also one of the easiest. This is called your background. Now, no, I don't mean a background from D&D where you grab it off a list and you go, oh, here's my background, here's my bonuses, my stats. No, that's not what I'm talking about. A background is a 2 or 3 word statement that defines you as a character. It has really no other bearing on the actual system aside from the fact that you yourself are going to act and be defined by this ideal. It could be anything from rebel punk to Night Stalker journalist to workaholic father. These are just baseline ideas of what you could use it for. Now, that was always a struggle for me, is like picking that thing that would define me, or would be a known characteristic, and it would be something that people would see through my RP. Now, once you pick step number one, which is just choosing your background, then you're going to go step number two. And this is where things get a little tricky for most people. Because in D&D, we want to roll dice, right? We want to roll dice just to ensure that we can get the best stats possible. It's not possible in the system. You won't have the best stats. You could have good stats depending on where you put them. But the idea is that you have a pool, and you have a pool of three. Actually, technically, you have three different pools that you can assign. And these pools are numbered 5, 4, and 3, representing 5 points, 4 points, and 3 points. At the very top of your character sheet, you're going to see an area called attributes. And they're kind of blocked in on squares because it basically represents intelligence, social, physical. So basically, mental stats, social stats, and physical stats are lined up for you. And with these pools of 5, 4, and 3 that you have, you can assign them to one of those squares and then distribute whatever you assign. So if I assigned the 3 to my physical stats, I have 3 points to put in there anywhere I want, whether that's stamina or strength, whatever it is. So this is your beginning as a character. You're going to decide at a very baseline level, where am I going to be good? It gets a little trickier after that, but that's very, very simplistic. Now, it does give you the first dot of every one of those stats free because you're a live human. But it literally gives you that first one free, and that's it. And if you want to buy the 5th dot of any stat, it costs 2 points. Otherwise, it's a 1-for-1 purchase. So as you can tell, the attributes are pretty straightforward. You can literally just put the dots in where you want them to go after you assign them to the proper group and move on with your day. Now that's step 2. Step 3 is where you have a lot of decisions to make, and these are your skills. Now they are broken down just like you would see the stats into mental, social, and physical, and grouped up in that way. And for that one, if you didn't guess already, you have the same ideal with here. You can actually assign one of your 3 pools to it. Now the pools for your skills are 11, 7, and 4. So I want you to think of this the same way that you would in D&D or any other sort of tabletop RPG. When I'm doing anything in the world, it is a combination of my attribute and my skill. That will determine the dice pool that I have to roll of those D10s. So if I put 4 into brawl and I put 2 into strength, I have a dice pool of 7. So that's why attributes and skills are so important that you pick right off the bat. So once you define how you want to be, once you define what skills you want to be, the next step is to choose your almost sort of specialties. Now, there are specialties listed in the book. Absolutely. A whole list of specialties. And what these are kind of like little niche things that you can do. And I'll kind of give you an example. There's one called compulsive liar. And all it really does is that you can plug it in next to your lying stat or deception stat. And whenever you make that lie, you get an extra dice because you're specialized in it. Because you've been lying your whole life, so you're good at spinning those lies. Same with brawl, same with any of these you could happen. The coolest thing about specialties, though, is you can make up your own with approval. So if I want to say, hey, you know what, I really like butterfly knives. So I want to have a specialty in using butterfly knives. So every time I'm using my butterfly knife, I get a bonus dice. That's super cool. Go ahead and do it. Now, overarching idea is you want to choose your attributes, your skills, and your specialties because it's crucially important that all of those kind of work in tandem or work together. Now, you could go low physical attributes, high physical skills, and this would kind of cancel each other out, making you mediocre at the process. So you can do things like that if you want to. Now, that's step 4. Step 5 is a step that if you're starting off a game as a human, you're going to skip this step altogether. This is where you would add in a supernatural template. Now, it's an optional add. It's not something that you have to do. It's not something that you really even want to do at the beginning. because those abilities, those sort of crazy things that these people can do, these supernatural creatures can do, it's kind of mind-boggling in the beginning and kind of run you down. Trust me, I know. Now, okay, so we're getting off topic. So whenever you're done doing your attributes, skills, specialties, not doing the template, you're ready for step 6. And that's where there's another section of your character sheet called other traits. Now, just like I mentioned earlier, attributes and skills determine everything. Do you want to take a guess on where all of the information from the other traits are populated from? That's right, your attributes and skills. So you're going to go through a combination of basically figuring out your HP based on 2 different stats. You're going to figure out your defense based on, I believe it's either the lowest of your dexterity or wits. You're going to figure out all that other traits information using a very simplistic formula based on the information you've already populated. That's done. And that will really show you how powerful you are, because when you look at a character sheet that has, 4 hit points, you understand that death is right around the corner, and it becomes very real for everyone. So you've chosen your other traits. Now, there is also a section near the top of the paper called Vice and Virtue. These are characteristics that define you, not unlike your background. You think of your background as where you came from, not what's currently defining you, but it could currently define you depending on your RP language. But your vice and virtue are things that you are prone to doing, especially your vice. A vice could be you're an alcoholic. A vice could be you're a glutton. Vice could be you're a drug user. Could be any number of things. A virtue is something like you're compassionate. A virtue could be something like you're confident or committed or lawful. So these vice and these virtues, whenever you choose them, they do actually have a mechanical aspect in the game. So if you choose to, and this is kind of defined by the person running the session, if you choose to actually, let's say you go with charity as your virtue, you have the ability to, if the DM or if the person running the game sees it fit, if you adhere to that virtue for an entire story. Now, a story could be 1 game, a story could be 2 games. It's kind of dependent upon the narrative at that point. But if you were to abide by your virtue the entire time of whatever you've talked with your storyteller about, you now at that point had the ability to regain back all of your willpower. Now, that leads me to another question. That's how you regain willpower. Now, vice is also the same thing. It's just different. Vice is a shorter goal. If I, constantly adhere to my vice during a session, I gain back 1 willpower. Not the same. Virtue obviously has a bigger payoff at the end. But what does willpower do? You probably noticed as you were filling out your other trait section that there's a willpower area. What does that mean? What does it do? Willpower is the ability for you in your human nature to give a little oomph. I'm going to do something a little harder. I'm going to try a little harder. I'm going to make this my focus, and I'm going to spend a willpower. And you get to add 2 dice to any roll. So it's very valuable. And the note is that you can only regain that willpower by either adhering to your vice or your virtue. So if you ever want to use it again, you got to do one of those things. All right, so you've made your attributes, made your skills, picked your specialties, filled out your other traits, picked your vice and virtue. What's the last step? Super simple. You're going to choose your perks. Now, I smile when I say that because perks are like the feat in D&D. They're the special things you can do. Now, some of these abilities, some of these perks give you the ability to do, additional dice of damage. They give you the ability to have specific mechanical implications. Some of them go a bit further. There are social, mental, and physical perks, just like you would find on any game, especially this one where it's always blocked like that. And you get to choose a certain number of perks. And every perk has a dot level sort of located with it. Like this perk is 2 dots. And just to let you know, you get a pool of 7. That's right, 7 dots to play with when it comes to perks. So, and just like with attributes or skills, if you want to buy the fifth dot of anything, it costs 2 points instead of 1. Examples of perks: holistic awareness, medicine. You're a boxer. You have boxing aspects. You have allies. You're really rich. So those are all kind of examples of perks that your character can just have. And you place those dots. You can have multiple perks as long as you have the dots for it. And once you actually place those dots, you get access to that. So it's very easy how you can see how you could have a character that is very physically strong, very much a good fighter, and also he knows kung fu at the fifth dot level, which gives him access to a whole bunch of crazy stuff that he can do. Or he's stupid rich. So when it comes to flying to a different city or trying to bribe someone, that comes easily. So that's steps 1 through 7. And when you get done with all of those steps, then you actually get to play the game. So I always like to end these very, very simply and sweetly. If you ever want me to talk about a different RPG, different tabletop game that's out there, don't hesitate to let me know.